Welcome to another episode of the Executive Hub Show. My name is Mustafa Hussaini, your host at the Executive Hub Show. Our aim and vision is to share tips, strategies, and actionable advice from successful entrepreneurs that you could use and apply to your business and grow and scale your business. This episode is brought to you by Persayo, your experts in web design services. Business owners lose customers every day because of outdated or confusing websites. Persayo creates clean and professional websites that attract and convert visitors. They also handle hosting and maintenance, so there is no tech stress, just results. To get a complimentary website assessment, visit persayo.com/web design. Persayo is PERSYO.com/web design. My guest today is Caleb Roth. Welcome, Caleb.
Thanks, Mustafa. Glad to be here.
Great to see you. Let me do the proper introduction to Caleb, and we're going to dive into a very interesting conversation about his entrepreneurial adventures and how he went from flipping books to now flipping companies, which is an interesting transition. So Caleb traded in the cubicle life for an entrepreneurial adventure in the wild world of Amazon book selling. Caleb Roth isn't just flipping books, he is flipping the script on how business is done. A collector of frameworks, a lover of numbers, and a master of making the complex feel simple, Caleb has a knack for turning ideas into action. His philosophy: the more people you serve, the more you win. Caleb lives in northern Indiana with his wife and 6 kids. When he is not working, you can find him in the golf course or playing with his guitar. Welcome again, Caleb.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the warm intro.
How is your day so far?
The day's good. We mentioned it for anybody looking. I did have an eye exam this morning, had the pupils dilated. So if I look overly excited to be here, it's true. I am excited, but also there may be some drugs in play.
Fantastic. Looking forward to this. So let's get into it. Caleb, what is your story?
Well, my story begins all the way back in 1987. Born way back. So I'm 37 years old. We talked about it in the intro. I'm one of 7 kids. Kind of grew up, had a lot of entrepreneurial tendencies, but didn't act too much on those. Went through college, studied business, had a corporate job. That was just the first thing out of college. Loved it. Was in marketing for Johnson & Johnson and sort of worked my way up there for 5 years. And then kind of started talking to my managers and my managers' managers, and just realized, you know what? The life that they had, they sort of felt trapped, and they got paid really well. They had great stock options, but it was kind of one of those deals where they couldn't get out of it. And, you get a couple weeks of vacation, but you keep having to ask adults what to do. And I didn't want to be a grown man, or at that point, 27, 28, and ask another grown human for time off or to go, play golf or skiing or whatever else. And so I kind of leaned back into my roots of an entrepreneur and started flipping books. And we'll get into more of the story, but that wasn't a very glamorous step down from corporate to flipping books. I did take a big pay cut, but we can get into kind of how I set myself up for that. But stepped out on my own in 2015 and haven't looked back since. So I've been self-employed, an entrepreneur for the last 10 years now.
Love it. So what do you do now? Who do you serve? And I guess, what do you do for them?
Yeah, I'm in a little bit of an interesting spot because I started flipping books and then eventually developed software. And I'm not technical. I don't know how to program or to code, but I understand what software can do, and was very fortunate to kind of run into the right people at the right time and build a team of developers that did that. So we ended up building multiple softwares in the Amazon book selling space. So that's kind of who we served. And then we actually sold that business in late 2022 to private equity. So I've been mostly off enjoying a second marriage here. That's where most of those kids came from. And so kind of taking my time and doing a couple other startups and investments. But we'll share mostly the story of the Amazon book world. So we served other entrepreneurs, other small businesses that wanted to figure out how to flip books or really anything on Amazon. We provided the research tools for them through our software.
So what is flipping books? Is it the same concept of flipping a house?
Essentially, I'd say flipping houses is more putting work into it and, remodeling a kitchen or a bath or adding a bedroom. Flipping books, there's really not a ton of value add. There's certainly people that specialize in collectible books and they will fix the books up and repair the spines and do that. I never really got into that world. We just simply found books, bought them low and sold them high. So we would go to garage sales, library stores, thrift stores. I ended up building a consignment deal to work directly with the libraries. But we'd essentially find books that we knew what the resale value was, buy them, and in a local market, and then flip those back online to a global audience.
Love. So these are like old physical books.
Not necessarily old. Most books have a life cycle. So if you find a brand new fiction book that's out right now that's selling brand new for 15 to 20 bucks, you can certainly flip that, buy it for $2 at a garage sale and flip it for 15. After fees, you'll make, 6, 8, 10 bucks, depending on what platform you sell it on. Those fiction books, there's millions of them printed. And so the market quickly goes to zero and there's really no opportunity to make money there. Textbooks, of course, have a lot of money, a lot of margin. There's those follow a seasonality. So you can buy those in the summer when they're on sale and then flip them in back during textbook season. So there's lots of ways to do arbitrage. I never really specialized in old books. I like books. I read a lot of books, but I wouldn't say I'm a book lover like some of the customers that we served.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Hmm. I'm guessing that you found a way to find books at large and then, like in bulk, get a lot of them and then resell them on your platform. Is that what happened?
Bingo. We didn't even have a platform. We resold them back primarily on Amazon. Some of our customers sold on eBay. But yeah, really business comes back to sort of like weightlifting. If you're going to, do one thing and make a few dollars, how many reps can you do of that? So if you're, lifting light weights on the bench press, let's say you're lifting 80 pounds. Of course, you and I are probably somewhat strong. We could do that a lot of times, or you could jump up to 180 and do a few reps and still get a lot of benefit. So when it came to flipping books, the trick is you can sell a book and make, spend $1 to make 5. That's a great return on investment. It's great margin, but you've only made $4. So if you want to make a reasonable business, you have to do that thousands of times in order to do that. So what we ended up doing was realize that if we went to stores ourselves and found 100 books at a library sale, for example, that's a great day. You might make a few $1,000s at a great sale. On a poor sale, you might make a few hundred, and then you just have to keep doing that. That constantly becomes trading time for money. So one of the things that we did is we started going to the library sales and say, hey, we'll build you custom software that all you have to do is scan your book's barcodes and they'll turn green or red. Green means there's some value. Red means there's no value. All the green ones, set them aside. We'll pay you a premium. So instead of $1, we'll pay you $3 for the books. Or if you want, we'll sell them on consignment and have a relationship and have a long-term customer experience where you set them aside. We figure out the value. We come in, prep them, list them, reprice them, handle returns, and then pay you out a portion of the profits. And so that business, that consignment type relationship really is what helped us scale. And it was repeatable because instead of me having to go to the store and find books whenever I got hungry and wanted to make more money, every day books would show up at my warehouse and our team could essentially process those. And we were able to build a repeatable business versus something where you just keep trading your time for money.
Very interesting. So what inspired you to get into this business? Was there a specific moment or idea that you realized there is a business here?
I think every person that goes to college and sees the sticker shock of a few $100s for textbooks. I remember my freshman year, I went in and
Uh,
I might have had a business book. This would have been in 2006 that probably cost $300. And you don't know any better, so you spend the $600, $700, $800 for textbooks for a semester, and then you go back at the end of the semester and say, "Hey, I'm going to trade these back in," and your $300 textbook is now worth $60. And you go, "Wait
yep.
a second, it's like almost new. I didn't even write in it. Like, how did it deteriorate that much value in 3 months?" And that's when you start looking on Amazon and looking in other places and realize, wait a second, I could have bought that same book on Amazon for $100, or we could have asked the professor, "Can we go back an edition or two?" Basically get the same book and spend $10. And
Yep.
so that's really what kind of awakened me to the idea that, there's some money in the book industry. And then that, as I was looking for ways out of the corporate experience, books was just something I knew. And so it was just logical to say, hey, could I build, an actual business, not just a fun side hustle doing books. And so I started back into there. It's not it is a very niche industry. There's only so many booksellers out there. And so the size of the business, it depends, but there's several $billion being sold every year of books in the
Mhm.
US. And so it is a large business, and there's definitely large competitors. But I started in books and then just kept finding growth year after year, then realized I could get into the software space and help other booksellers do research and figure out what the books were worth. And that allowed us to build a SaaS business, software as a service, where people paid us every month to provide better tools. And so essentially, we built tools for us that made our jobs easier and better. And then we were able to leverage those same tools and sell them technically to our competitors, but we're able to really build a community where everybody benefited as a result.
Beautiful. Great idea. So here's another thing that I had in mind when you mentioned that you said that you were flipping books. And I thought that you would maybe go on Amazon and find books that are not performing that well, that they could be performing well, and you would buy them and maybe redesign them and rewrite the front and back, and then, relaunch the book and make a better sale. Is that something you guys did, or is that just totally not?
We never did it. I guess if you could get the publication rights or find books that are out of print or where the trademark or the copyright has expired, which it does in some cases, I believe, that might be an angle. That's never something we did. We would buy a lot of books in the off season. So there's several software out there. We had one. There's some good competitors that created similar tools that help you research books. And the way it works for a lot of people is there's repricing software. So you may have an out of print book that typically sells for $100, and it might sell a copy every other month or so. But let's say two repricers get into a battle and they start, dropping the price and undercutting each other by, a nickel every time. Over time, that book might drop down to $20. And if you have alerts set up or this software, you could come in and buy both copies in the $20 range, relist them, and just be patient and wait for the next buyer to come along. And so there's a lot of opportunities of just playing arbitrage, buy low in the off season, sell high during whatever that season is, whether it's textbook season, Christmas season. If you get gardening books, they're going to do better in the spring and summer. And so just understanding the market as a whole allows you to kind of find those inefficiencies. So in some ways, we're like day traders on the stock market, except it's much more thinly traded, and you're actually touching real commodities versus just paper profits.
And I'm guessing that you turned that into a big business when you had it.
It depends on what you mean by big, but yeah, we built that. I also bought books, and the company we bought for, I'll share it now, is out of business, but Nebraska Book Company was a wholesaler. They provided books to the bookstores, and they had a guide, which was every 6 weeks, they had a list of books they would buy and the prices they would pay. And it turns out you can take that guide, run it back through Amazon through their API, find books cheaper. So I could find books for $25, turn around and sell them for $35. Not very great margins, but I was getting 5% cash back on the Amazon credit card, which is tax-free, like just bonus money. And I had a guaranteed buyer. And so we ended up building a really substantial business that we didn't talk about much. And again, I'm happy to share now because Nebraska went out of business about a year ago. So there's lots of opportunities as you get into the space. I think most people start by going to thrift stores, finding a few books, flipping them on Amazon, and then the light bulb goes off in their head of, oh, this works. Now, how can I build a repeatable, predictable business on top of it? And, even though it's just books, you can literally build probably 10 to 12 different revenue streams from that same industry.
Very interesting. So this is an industry of people that are just buying and selling books, and that's what they do, I guess, for a living.
Oh yeah, yeah. And we used to host conferences, and I've been to conferences that other people in the same community hosted. So we'd have upwards of 50 to 100 people show up, spend a weekend together, trade tips, trade ideas. Yeah, technically we're competitors, but again, the industry is so big. Most of us lived in different states. And so it was an opportunity to, again, I never really got into this, but I had friends that would buy books by the truckload. So 40,000 pounds of books at one time, maybe 30,000 books, they would buy, drop off in their warehouse, dump them out onto assembly lines, conveyor belts. Some of them had automation. So they would just flip the books over. It would read the barcode, kick it into the right bin, and they would figure out the best ways to monetize, whether that's Amazon, other wholesalers, whether it's selling to a local bookstore. A lot of these big players were incredibly sophisticated and built $100 million plus businesses just selling
Wow.
used books.
Selling used books, $100 million business.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
several of them. Like there's at least three, maybe four or five that I know of that are north of 100 million.
Very interesting. Wow, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
Interesting. Um, so you said did you say you sold it your business to Amazon?
No, I wish. Sold it to private equity. There were two companies coming in around 2022 that kind of had this thesis of let's go in and buy all these SaaS companies that are supporting and serving Amazon sellers, and let's sort of bundle those together, add more value, whatever that might be. And so the two companies came. We kind of researched and interviewed with both of them, and ended up selling to a company called Three Colts.
Three. Oh, okay. Okay. And then, so are you mostly focused on consulting now other people on how to do the book flipping business?
Yeah, it's mostly informal. I don't really have a formal program that I do, but I enjoy the industry. I went and spoke at a conference last year that a couple friends started. They kind of picked up the torch where we left it. I'm bound by a non-compete for another, I guess, 10 months at this point. So I'm a little bit limited in terms of what I can do in terms of consulting. I have a lot of friends doing software and associates doing that as well. And I have to be careful and guarded about what I can and can't say. But come December 1st of this year, that all goes off the table and some of those options may open up. But books was fun. So I did orthopedics for 5 years. I did books for a little over 7. And now I'm sort of looking for that next chance. I'm a type 7, if you know the Enneagram. I love new ideas. I like to just be curious and go chase new things. So while I could stay in the book space, I have a lot of friends there. I'm still connected there, but I'm really looking forward to reinventing myself.
And so you guys, where you were doing it, you were operating in US, in the States, right?
Yeah, and we source books out of Canada as well, which is, I believe, in your backyard. So we had a number of libraries that source books. The options and the Amazon market's not nearly as big up there. It's about 10 times smaller in Canada as compared to the US. So we
Hmm.
worked out ways, and fortunately, we didn't have tariff threats and everything else going at us back several years ago. But we sourced a lot of books out of Canada, and then our software did work in the UK, and we had some of our software working in Canada as well.
Very interesting. So it seems like this could turn into an international business where you could be sourcing in through Canada, US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, all the English speaking countries, right?
You could, and Amazon was rolling out in Australia. They just started and launched with new books, so used books was not an opportunity. We did talk to several partners in the Middle East that were kind of building businesses, and we're looking at ways to source books. Books are pretty heavy as well. They are durable. You can throw 1,000 of them on a pallet and ship them overseas in a single pallet. So at scale, you can sort of build a business and move books around. I know people that did that. We've done it a little bit, but you got to be really smart and know what you're doing because it does get costly with shipping expenses the way they are.
For sure. Did you guys ever have a problem of books freezing on you up in Canada and in the cold?
No, down south where it's hot and moist and humid, I had to work the word moist in there because I know some people hate it. So sorry, but not sorry. Humidity destroys books way more, and rain. Never really had cold do too much damage unless it was snow or cold rain or something got on them.
Because I know some printer friend of mine, he was saying that their paper freezes in cold, like the stack of paper. I don't know if books freeze too when left outside.
Um, I don't know. We fortunately never dealt with too much. They would be shipped in
Okay.
semi trucks and deal with the cold. I lived in Colorado and Indiana during that time, and so we definitely have some cold climate. But personally, I never saw too much. But by the end of the business, we were mostly selling software and empowering other resellers versus doing a lot of it ourselves.
Got it. Got it. So, Caleb, what are some of the milestones that you achieved along the way when you ran your business? And
Well,
uh,
milestones would have been launching different softwares. I can't give specific numbers again due to the non-competes, but we're talking a book business that exceeded $1 million a year for several years in a row, and a software business that was north of that. The software was really impressive because the margins are way better. Software is very expensive to build. It costs 6 figures, to just get the first prototype out the door. And the only reason I was able to do that is one, I had a friend, who became a friend that did it and gave me a great rate. And I also included him with equity, but I also lived below my means way back. So this is we talked about what do I want people to get from hearing my story. It's not just about me bragging. It's saying, hey, here's different ways to think about life, different frameworks. And one of the things I did right out of college is I bought a duplex and I rented half and lived in half. And so I basically lived for free. And by the end of my time working at Johnson & Johnson, I was making $100,000 a year plus some bonuses and everything else. And I was living on way less. So when it came time to say, hey, I'm ready to quit my job, most people, if they're making $100,000, are going to be spending $99,000, or they're going to spend 105 and rack up credit card debt. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're able to create margin, and I know that that's a luxury and not everybody has that ability, but if you can live below your means, that opens up so many doors. And for me, I was able to take a step back and start my own thing. And then I was able to invest some of that money into rolling out a software. So the more you can understand your numbers, look at your numbers. I know personal finance isn't glamorous, it isn't sexy, but it is very important if you want freedom. That can open a lot of doors.
For sure. For sure. So, what do you have any best practices for people living below their means, and how they could like in simple how to look at your numbers every month to make sure that you're living below?
Yeah, I think having a scoreboard, having numbers to look at is really important. What gets measured gets managed. I was trying to flip that around in my head, but if you measure things, you can manage them. There's tons of great budgeting tools. I used to use mint.com. They are out of business now. I use Monarch personally, but there's lots of great tools out there. The important thing is not to overcomplicate it, because you can get in the weeds and try and categorize every transaction and just have your head spin. I've got a budgeting system I use. I call it the stoplight budget. It's very, very simple. Red, green, yellow. Red is anything that's a monthly commitment, like a mortgage payment, rents, utilities, Netflix, cell phone plans. Anything that I'm committed to paying monthly is a red expense. So I just lump those together. And in general, that should probably be 30 to 50% of your monthly take-home pay. Yellow is all the fun stuff. So, things that you don't have to spend, like they're not a monthly commitment, but I put food in that, groceries, any type of entertainment, any travel. Those are things that you could dial back. Obviously, you have to eat, but you're not committing to, invest in a steak or half a cow every other month or something. So
Mhm.
yellow would be everything else, and then green is what's left. And have you read the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz? Have you heard of that
It's on
concept?
my list, but I haven't read it.
Great book. I love Michalowicz as an author. I think I'm saying his name right. It's a Polish dude, I believe. But his whole thing is most people in business and in personal finance think about, what am I making? What's my revenue? What am I spending? And then whatever's left over is just a bonus. And he encourages you to flip that around and say, no, no, no. The purpose of living, the purpose of running a business is to turn a profit. So we're going to flip that equation, and it's now your revenue minus profits. And so he looks at tons of different industries, different types of businesses, different size. So $1 million business is going to do things very differently than a $250,000 business, very differently than a $10 million business. But you change that, you say, hey, I'm going to save, or I'm going to have profit of 10%. And you can do that in your personal life too. There's a lot of bank accounts now that you can automate things. So every time you get a paycheck, you could actually set aside 10% to go into a profit or an investment account. And then you just force yourself to spend less, because when you look at
Mhm.
your regular account, it's not there. So when your buddies say, let's go drinking and go grab dinner and go to the movies, you look at your bank account and that 10% is out of sight, out of mind. And so I call it the little thinking approach. I had an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Nevins. I doubt you'll ever watch this, but if you're watching it, he taught me a lot. And simplicity wins. I think you know that too, Mustafa, from doing all your marketing. But the simpler you keep it, the better. And then you can be aware of what's going on and make changes.
100%. I'm a huge fan of simple. I mean, our entire brand and everything we do is about keeping it simple,
Yep.
because there's just people make things complex, and as soon as it gets complex, it stops working,
Yeah.
and it's very hard and costly to maintain. Um, Love your comment about profits. Years ago, I heard Dan Kennedy talk about saying a business owner's primary job and their sworn duty is to create profits. And it's mind boggling how many business owners don't even think about creating profits or making profits. They're all, like you said, as long as they're breaking even, or, uh, some of them they could carry on even in a negative forever.
Well, we kind of got away from it too. A lot of businesses took venture capital, took took private equity, took funding, and the goal was just to scale and to try and find product market fit, throw a bunch of money at something and hope for the 100 times return or the 1,000 times return, and understand you're going to run 70-80% of the businesses into the ground. And, we were bootstrapped, meaning I never took a dollar of outside funding. I didn't have investors bugging me, hey, when am I going to get paid back? So we were able to make decisions based on what we wanted to do and where we thought we could best serve people. And, other than the initial investment to build the software, we never had an unprofitable month. Even, one of the challenges we got to was COVID. We lost about 40% of our customers in between March and April of 2020 because all the thrift stores were closed. So people could not use our app and there's no reason to keep paying us. And we actually went and refunded everybody that had an annual plan just because that was the right thing to do. We gave them, I think, a month or two free. And we just said, hey, we understand times are tough right now and we'd love it if you could stick around, but we don't want your money if you can't go use it. So there was, that's something we were able to do. And even during that time when we lost 40% of our revenue, we still ran a profitable business.
So did you refund the entire year's worth or just for 2 months?
No, what we did is we went back, gave everybody, once we realized COVID was here, it wasn't like going to bounce back after a few weeks. Customers that were month to month, which was most of our customers, had the luxury of just canceling. So they could cancel anytime, restart back when they felt comfortable going out in public. And so they had that. We have a number of customers, I forget the numbers, but 10 to 20% of our customers that were on annual plans. And so we refunded them or applied a credit to their account of, I forget, it was at least a month, probably 2 months, and said, hey, because you didn't have the ability to just cancel in the middle, we're just going to give you an extra 2 months. So when you do get back to it, and we said we'd make a decision later, but most people ended up putting masks on and getting out. They were trying to run their own business. And so most of our customers got back out into the field and, felt like that was at least the right thing to do.
Love it. That's a great, and I think overall that to me is like a perfect retention strategy. Where,
well, it's interesting because you don't do it to get retention. You do it because it's the right thing to do, and then it helps with retention. I see a lot of business owners flip that the other way, and they go, "What's the best way to keep customers and make them happy?" It's like that's you kind of end up at the same route, but it's a slightly different approach.
Yeah, but what I meant is like you did the right thing, and it in turn helps you keep your customers.
Yep.
Instead of I know some companies would be like, well, you're on a contract, you have to pay up, and if you don't pay me, I'm going to take you to court.
Yeah.
And then those customers are going to find a way to get out.
Totally.
Right. Interesting. What were some of the challenges that you faced, while reaching the goals and milestones that we just talked about over the years?
We had a lot of challenges, but I'd say most of them were just really us. Software would break down or go offline, or we didn't communicate well enough with our customers. So, Alex Hormozi talks a lot about, competition is sort of made up. We did have a competitor that he's probably watching this. We've talked since I sold the company, but, they would, in my mind, they would copy everything we did. So by the end of our journey, their app looked identical to ours. Now, they were in existence long before us. From their viewpoint, they're going to say we came in and copied their idea. I would say we innovated and improved. But you can get held up and really focused on your competition and worry about it. Or you can just say, hey, who am I here trying to serve? What's the best way I can serve them? And just keep your head down and do it. Now, it doesn't mean you just let someone come and copy you. Like you do talk to lawyers, you figure out what can be done. But competitors, at least in our space, even though there were tons of them, didn't really slow us down. It was really us getting in our own way and not being able to build things as quickly as we wanted.
Love it. Like you're right. I mean, if you keep innovating and improving on your end, your competition becomes irrelevant.
Well, when we launched, we launched at a premium. So we had a monthly tool, and our premium with a database and all the bells and whistles, they were $40 a month, and we came in at 44. We wanted to be a 10% premium. We didn't want to start a race to the bottom. When we launched, we had a launch plan where you could prepay for 6 months and lock in a lower rate or whatever. And our lower rate was $35 a month. So our competitors saw that and they actually dropped their rates to 35 and they never raised them back up. So by the time we went to launch, we were now at 20% premium. They were at 35, we were at 44, and we never budged. And I'm really glad we set that bar higher because based on what our analysis of the market, we ended up with more customers by the time we sold our business, and they were more valuable customers as well. So someone else had the same tool that looked roughly the same, but their owner was not a bookseller, was not putting their face out there, was not building a community, wasn't teaching people how to do like run a business. And because of all those reasons, people felt connected. They felt, they just felt a certain way about us, and they were willing to pay a small premium for that luxury. And I'm really glad they did.
I was going to ask you how you did it. So you did it by building a community, teaching them how to run the business, supporting them better compared to your competition, and that's what justified the premium price.
Yeah, and I started sharing my journey. So I had a blog, and I was just like kind of like MythBusters saying, "Hey, people say books with a sales rank over 1 million never sell," and well, they do, and here's proof. So I've always been numbers driven, spreadsheets oriented. I love to look at data, and so I was just sharing my own experience. I didn't even have the goal of launching software from the very beginning. It was just that entrepreneurship is lonely. There weren't as many communities out there for it. And so I just started doing that. Then I started a Facebook community. I looked the other day; it's up to 35,000 members. We had a large email group, and we tried to just say, "Hey, we're all in this together, and we're going to try and sell you tools, of course. But ultimately, I care about your well-being. And if you can go build a business and put food on the table for yourself or your family, that's awesome. We'd love it if you use our tools to do it. But either way, here's how to do it. Here's the training. And the more that we talk to each other, the better we all get."
Love it. So you had a free community? Is that
Yep.
what it was?
Yeah, we had a free
35,000
community.
people, and some of them would buy your tools, some of them don't, but you provided value regardless.
Yep. And we had a YouTube channel, and we had a course that was free. Other people would sell courses for, $100 to $1,000. And we just gave it for free and said, "Hey, use our tool, use our training, and pay for our tool if you like it."
I love it. Great model. Great model. Um, so speaking of numbers, did you read that book Profits First, and did it help you in that business? Is that why you kind of ran a healthy business?
Yeah, we ran a healthy business just because I knew that profits were super important. And if I wasn't able to pay myself, I wasn't going to be able to stay in it for the long term. And if I didn't create enough margin to pay other people, I couldn't bring smarter people into the business. I
Hmm.
am a marketer, but I'm not a digital marketer. And so, I hired a developer. I hired someone to manage the database because I don't know how to do that. I hired someone to do all the marketing, and we ended up being business partners. They had equity, and I found the right people to come around. But if you don't make enough profit, that means you can't expand your team, which means there's only so much you can do. And one of the kind of guiding principles for me as well was, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And so, yeah, when we built the team, we clashed sometimes, and we had questions or differences of opinion as to the best strategy. And so that did slow us down. But because we had that depth of knowledge and the different perspectives, we were able to go much farther as a group than we would have individually.
Very interesting. Great approach. I mean, I, and I'm guilty of this as well. And I've tried to, but when you work with other people, growth and scaling becomes a lot easier and faster when you have the right people, obviously. But there's we try to, or our tendency in the beginning is to try to figure out everything on our own, and it takes forever to do that, and it's costly and it's frustrating and depressing, and we could probably talk an hour about that
It's
alone.
it's costly. Have you read Who Not How?
I have not.
It's it's Ben Sullivan and Darren Hardy, or backwards. It's Ben and Darren, I think. But they wrote that same concept. It's a very simple book. I think it's 150 pages. It probably could have been 20 pages. But it's that idea of, when you come across a challenge, we're problem solvers. We're entrepreneurs. We go out and do things. So the tendency is to say, "Well, I can figure that out. I'm smart. I can do the research." Or you flip the script and say, "Wait a second. Who would be the best person to do this versus how can I solve it?" And that who might lead you to hiring, might lead you to paying a consultant, but they're going to speed up that learning curve and really get you on the right path. So that was another good read, but I read that after I sold the business.
Love it. Who is the best person to solve this problem? Great question. Or so sometimes, to add to that, I think sometimes when I try to fix a problem and I know I have to fix it, I just ask myself the question of who can help me with this.
Yep.
And then sometimes I struggle with an issue for like a month or two or a few weeks, and then I pick up the phone, call a couple of smart friends of mine, and within 30 seconds they give me a solution, and
Yep.
I always regret not calling them sooner.
Yep.
you know
Yeah,
Love it.
our ego can get in the way, or just our pride, and like, well, I can figure it out. I'm intelligent, or I'm this is embarrassing. Like I'm not a very handy person. So when something goes wrong around the house, I'll try to do a quick YouTube search, but often I'm calling someone and going, and I'll just kind of be self-deprecating and go, hey, like this is not normal to me. But talking personal finance, talking business strategy, a lot of my friends call me and they're like, these are such basic questions, but I just don't know. And I'm like, no, it's fine. I love this stuff. I will gladly help you, and you can come and fix my toilet or cut down a tree or whatever that might be.
Love it. Love it. So, Caleb, what would you say is holding you back right now?
In what arena? What specifically? Just in
Business,
general?
general.
Man, that's a good question. I would say anytime you keep running into things, like life has a way of bringing you back to the same lesson until you learn it. There's an old Stoic philosophy, like the obstacle is the way. I don't know if you know Ryan Holiday's work, but he's kind of reignited Stoic thinking. And so you think that like you run into something and maybe it's being organized, or communicating more clearly, or speaking your truth. I think a lot of those things will keep popping back up into your life until you learn it. So what's holding me back right now is kind of what we talked about earlier, is just clarity. Is what am I trying to accomplish? I've sold a number of software businesses all to the same person or same entity. So I'm fortunate that I do have, I don't have to worry about the next paycheck next month. I'm good for a little while. And so then you start asking those deeper questions of not just what can I do to make some money, but what can I do to have an impact in the world? And so some of that is just sitting back and talking to people, reading books, doing research, figuring out what problems are out there, and just kind of collecting all those dots. And then it's a matter of deciding where you want to go after, and then jumping back in and taking action. That's why I love entrepreneurs. That's why, business is a great sandbox to play in and to learn and to test yourself, because you go in and you're not just reading and thinking and writing business plans. You're trying it, and you're getting punched in the face, and your customers are giving you feedback. And so I love the game of business. I know some people don't like calling it a game, but it's a beautiful arena, and it gives you that chance to realize where your weaknesses are, where you can grow as a leader, as a person. And so I miss that in some ways. I do miss the community, and I am plugging back in a few ways, but I'm still sort of scratching and trying to find the next big thing.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Caleb, who's had a major influence on your journey as a leader?
Man, I've had so many. I actually went back. I spent a summer in China, day trading stocks of all things when I was in college, and I'd actually kind of forgotten there was he was just a little older than me. His name's Nate Zook. He's an air traffic controller now out in Colorado, but he took me under his wing, and he was just a kind of a godly man, a spiritual man, but also very practical. We would meet up weekly, and he would just invest in me and share like stuff he was learning. I think we went through books together. We just talked about life when I was in college at the time, and then right out of college. He was incredibly instrumental. And I've been very fortunate. My high school golf coach texts me every single day, asks how I'm doing, sends me an encouraging note. I had several business professors, Michael Harstein, Chuck Yeager, there's a number of them, but just people that poured into me. And I went and asked for it, and sometimes they went and found me. But I was very fortunate to have a lot of just strong men and women that have poured into me over the years. And so I'm very grateful for them. I wouldn't be who I am without a lot of their attention.
Beautiful. Love it. Love it. Love it. Caleb, give me two of your favorite books of all time.
All right. We did hit on a few already. We talked about Profit First, Who Not How. I would say of all time, it's a little bit difficult. I did just go back and read Atomic Habits, so that's fresh. I know that's a very classic one by James Clear. Probably my favorite book is called The One Thing. Have you read that?
Mm-hmm.
By Gary Keller of Keller Williams Real Estate and Jay Papasan. And it's just a very simple book for cutting through the clutter and realize what's the most leveraged thing you can do, and then just go
Yep.
do it. So time
Mm-hmm.
blocking, I learned that from that book. Another one is very similar to it. It's called Essentialism by Neil McCune.
Yep.
I think it's about 10 years old. I just read it actually last week. That had a lot of similar vibes.
Mm-hmm.
The One Thing. So I love those. Yeah, those would be my two recommendations.
Love it. Another one that complements those two is the 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch.
Okay.
Have you read that one?
I'm familiar with it, but I've not read it.
I would read that. You're gonna
Okay.
love it. You would love it. If you like those two, you're gonna love that one
I
too.
do like the 80-20 principle in general, so I'll take a note and add that to my list.
Yeah, it's I read that back in 2017, and it changed the course of my business and life and thinking. The whole thing along the same ideas.
Yep.
So I would recommend it. Love it.
Well,
So
one of the tips I do actually, because you recommended, I just took a note. But as soon as we're done on the call, I'm literally just going to go buy it. I'm going to go on Amazon, probably find a used copy
awesome.
because I don't care. And what I used to do is kind of leave it there, and then I'd lose the note. And so what I've started, I think I learned it off the Tim Ferriss show. Just when stuff like that happens, just go do it, take action. It'll show up in a couple days because I'm in northern Indiana. We don't get stuff same day or next day usually, but it's just waiting there. And I go, oh, all right, put it on my pile of books to be read, and off we go.
Yeah, I'm gonna get profits first. I made a note to go get it because it's been on my list forever, and I haven't read it. So I'm gonna pick it up.
Yeah, it's excellent. And then not a specific book, but Cal Newport. If you've heard of him, he does some great podcasts as well. I think he has his own podcast, but he's written several books on like digital detox, kind of the essentialism concept. But he's a brilliant author, very deep thinker, and really challenges you to kind of get off of social media in some ways and go do something with your life. So he's a just phenomenal writer. I've discovered him recently and have really
Love it.
appreciated his works.
I will look him up too. Caleb, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice when starting your business, what would it be?
Start earlier. I wrestled with the decision to quit my corporate job because I wondered what friends would think, what my in-laws would think. You know, I'm a people person and a people pleaser. And so I kind of hemmed and hawed and wrestled with that decision for, probably longer than I should have. And I remember going in and giving my 2 weeks notice to my boss and saying, hey, and I was so afraid of what my coworkers would think. And what ended up happening is my coworkers came to my cubicle and were like, I thought they were going to yell at me or you're so dumb or what the heck, you're going to go into books. And they came to me and said, take me with you, like get out of here as fast as you can. We're jealous. And, I was so worried about stepping out on my own. And when I finally did it, I started a side hustle on the side. I already proved to myself that I could do books. But yeah, jump earlier is what I would tell myself.
Beautiful. And I mean, every time I pull the trigger on something that I'm afraid of, there's always a good thing on the other side. The more afraid I am, the better the opportunity and the more rewards I get.
Yeah, that resonates. You got to be careful. Like jumping off a cliff is a bad idea unless you have a parachute. So just because
I
you're
mean,
afraid
yeah.
doesn't mean you should. But yeah, there's a lot of times when there's an opportunity that pops up and I'm like, oh, I'm scared. Like I'm terrified. Someone might, laugh at me or I might look like an idiot. And you're right. The good things are usually on the other side of that fear.
Love it. What's one advice that made a big impact on your life or business?
Just know your numbers. And that, I learned that from reading so many books, but just have some very simple numbers. We taught it in the business of doing books because so many people we call it chasing the yellow bars on the Amazon app or the orange bars. You're just getting the dopamine hit of getting the sales, but the sales don't matter. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. And that's the same thing in real life. If you make $50,000 a year, but you only spend 40 versus you make 100, but spend 99, you're richer if you make less money. It's really not the top line, it's the bottom line. And so I've just had that hammered in so often, and that's something that I've just practiced. And if you can do that as much as you can, live at a margin and know what your bottom line is, you're going to have a lot less stress in your life.
Beautiful. Speaking of books that you said you read on numbers, is Profits First the first one people you think should read, or are there any other books that you think people should read on
So
knowing
if you
numbers?
run a business, I love Profit First. It does get very technical. And if it's not really a personal finance book, it's really built more for business. The principles are great. They apply to lots of different things. If you want a personal finance book, Ramit Sethi wrote I Will Teach You to Be Rich, sort of a cheesy title, but a phenomenal book. So highly recommend that. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I think it's been out 10 years now, and there's probably several editions of it. But grab a copy of that. He really simplifies budgeting, credit cards, sort of all the things that you sort of get hung up on, insurance, and he just spells it out and simplifies things. And so he's a phenomenal teacher. He's got a great podcast on the psychology of money as well. But that's a great starting book.
Beautiful. So, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi
Yep.
and Profits First. Beautiful.
Got it.
I'll put that on my list. Caleb, is there a question that I didn't ask you that you think if I did ask would add value to our listeners and people that are watching?
That's a good question. I think I don't have a question per se, but it kind of goes back to you asked me what's the one thing before we started this, going back to the one thing principle. What's the one thing you want people to walk away from after this interview? And it's really this is if you heard something that sort of piques your curiosity or inspires you, take action. I have a phrase, and I used to say it a lot at the conferences we went to. It's been accredited to so many different people, Mark Twain among others. Is you're the same person you were yesterday or 5 years ago, except for two things: the people you meet and the books you read. And of course, as a bookseller, I love that phrase because go buy more books and help my business and all my friends. But new ideas, keeping an open mind and trying to just get new information into your head is great. But unless you can figure out how to apply it and put those into practice, it doesn't really matter. You can be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't know how to act on it or get started, then you're not going to be any different than you were. So if you hear these books, take action, buy them, read them. The worst that happens is you get a few new ideas, but then don't just stop at reading it. Take that information and do your best to put it into practice.
I love what you just said. Literally a few months ago, I wrote an article, a blog saying the idea of reading a book per week is not a good idea. You need time to apply what you learn. And there's no way for you, let's say a guy wrote Profits First, and I don't think you could read, learn, digest, and apply the whole thing in a week. So I absolutely love what you said. Like we gotta apply what we learn. Otherwise we become an ocean, like 1 inch deep and
Well,
not
and this
much
applies
application.
to, and I know we're running up against our time, but I'm again type 7. I love to have all the experiences. So for me, it's really fun to try and go read 30 to 50 books a year. But what would probably be way better than that is to read 3 to 5 books a year and then read those same ones the next year and read those same ones the next year. And so you're gonna absorb way more. And the same applies to people. It's fun to go meet new people and hear their stories and have lunch meetings and social hours and just hear as many stories as possible. That's one of the benefits of you running a podcast is you get to meet some amazing people. But one kind of habit you can do is at the end of each year, I go back and I think through who were some of the best interactions I had with people this past year where I felt inspired, where I felt motivated. And I say, rather than going to find the next 10 people that I might try and add to my circle, I say, what if I just went back and reinvested in those 3 to 5 that were just incredible and go try and have more meaningful times with those people? And so depth, going deeper with a few books, with a few people, I think will benefit you a lot more than just a shotgun approach.
Love it. I know we're out of time, but really quick, you tell us about your podcast. You run a podcast.
Yes, we ran
too, right?
we ran a Books and Bourbon podcast. That's so if you're an Amazon seller, you can go check that out. That's a few years old at this point, but a lot of the stories and the content's good. And then my business partners, Matthew and David, and I ran for about 30 episodes. We ran one called Stacking Habits. And so we looked at health and sleeping and business and time management and leadership. And we got to interview some just incredible people. Some of them have turned into friends. But you can check that out. We're on a brief hiatus, although David and I are talking about resurrecting it. So Stacking Habits Part 2, hopefully coming soon.
Beautiful. Caleb, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you for showing up and sharing your journey, your story, and all the tidbits and all the books that people could use and read. That was very valuable and full of value bombs. Where can people reach out to you and find you?
Easiest way would probably be Instagram, although I am toying with getting rid of that. Social media I don't think is going to serve me very much this year. So you can go to Caleb Roth, just my name, calebroth.com, and there should be a contact me button there. And I want to blog. I think I only have a post or two, but as I get off social media, there'll be more stuff coming there. So calebroth.com.
Beauty. So go to calebroth.com, gang, if you want to get a hold of Caleb. If you have any questions for me or Caleb, put them in the comments wherever you're watching or listening to the show, and we'll do our best to get back to you. Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another episode of the Executive Hub Show. My name is Mustafa Hosseini with my guest, Caleb Roth. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on our next episode. Bye now.